The call came at 6:47 inches the morning. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the pain, not the fear, but the time. 6:47. My son was already awake by then. He's always been an early riser. He just wasn't answering. My name is Margaret. I'm 64 years old, and for most of those years I believed that the love you pour into raising a child comes back to you somehow. Not as payment, not as debt, just as presence. Just as someone picking up the phone when the hospital calls. I was wrong about that, and it took 31 missed calls to teach me. Let me start from the beginning, because the ending won't make sense without it. I raised my son Daniel on my own for most of his life. His father, Gerald, was a good man in the way that some good men are steady, quiet, reliable until he wasn't. Gerald left when Daniel was 11. Not for another woman, not for any dramatic reason. He just said he was tired and drove to his sister's place in Phoenix and never really came back to stay. We divorced quietly. I kept the house in Columbus, Ohio. I kept the mortgage, the grocery bills, the parent-teacher conferences, the Saturday morning baseball games in the rain. Daniel was everything I had. I want to say that plainly, without apology, because I think some mothers are made to feel ashamed of loving their children that completely. I am not ashamed. He was my whole world, and I worked 2 jobs through his high school years: receptionist by day, bookkeeping for a small restaurant 3 nights a week, so he could go to a decent college without drowning in loans. He graduated from Ohio State, civil engineering. I cried in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I could drive home. He married a woman named Brianna 6 years ago. She's not a bad person. I want to be fair here. But Brianna came with strong opinions about how a marriage should work, and one of those opinions was that mothers-in-law should exist at a comfortable distance. Holidays became negotiated events. Phone calls got shorter. Visits were planned months in advance, and then sometimes quietly canceled a week before. I told myself this was normal. I told myself every family finds its rhythm. I told myself Daniel was busy, and he was genuinely busy, with his career and his 2 kids and the house they were renovating in Westerville. I stopped telling myself those things on a Tuesday morning in October. I had been having what I thought were stress symptoms for a few weeks. Some tightness in my chest, fatigue that felt heavier than my usual tired. I was teaching part-time at a community college, by then bookkeeping courses, adult education, and I figured the fall semester was just wearing me down. My doctor had told me at my last checkup that my blood pressure was creeping up. She'd adjusted my medication. I thought that was handling it. I was walking to my car after an early morning class when it hit me. Not a sharp pain the way people describe it in movies. It was more like something sitting on my chest, heavy and insistent. And then my left arm went strange, and the parking lot tilted, and I went down on one knee next to my car door like I was about to propose to the asphalt. A student named Carla saw me go down. She was 22 years old, running late for her own class, and she stopped and called 911 and held my hand and talked to me until the paramedics came. I didn't know Carla well. She sat in the 3rd row and always turned her assignments in on time. She held my hand for 18 minutes in a cold parking lot and told me I was going to be fine. The paramedics said it was a cardiac event, not a full heart attack, but close enough that they used serious voices and moved quickly. They got me to Riverside Methodist Hospital in under 12 minutes. That's when they started calling Daniel. I know the number because the hospital patient advocate told me afterward. 31 calls to Daniel's cell phone over the course of 4 hours. They also called the house line 3 times. They sent a message to the emergency contact email I had listed on my forms. 31 calls. I drifted in and out of consciousness through the first part of that day. I remember fluorescent lights and the sound of a blood pressure cuff inflating, and a nurse with red hair asking me if I was in pain. I remember asking for Daniel, and someone telling me they were trying to reach him. I didn't know then that he was 2 states away. He and Brianna had taken the kids to a resort in Tennessee for fall break. A waterpark resort, the kind with the big slides and the lazy river and the overpriced food. They had left Sunday afternoon. The cardiac event was Tuesday. I was not told about the trip. Not a text, not a mention. The last time I had spoken to Daniel was 9 days before, a phone call that lasted 6 minutes while he was driving somewhere and kept getting distracted by whatever was on the radio. Here's what I learned later, pieced together from various sources. Daniel saw the first missed call from the hospital. He saw it while waiting in line for one of the water slides. He didn't recognize the number and decided to deal with it later. He saw the second call too, and the third. By the fourth or fifth call, he may have understood something was wrong. I will never know exactly what he thought because he has never given me a straight answer. What I know is that he didn't call back. He went to lunch at the resort buffet. He posted a photo on his Instagram of his youngest daughter eating a waffle with too much syrup. The caption said, "Family time, no screens, just living." I was on a table in a cardiac unit while my son was posting about disconnecting from screens. They stabilized me. The cardiologist, Dr. Osei, a calm and methodical man who spoke to me like I was an intelligent adult, explained that I had experienced what's called a nistomy, a type of heart attack that doesn't fully block the artery but causes real damage. He said I needed a procedure, a stent, and that they would do it the next morning. He said I was lucky I came in when I did. He also told me gently that they had been unable to reach my emergency contact. I asked him to say that again. He said it again. I lay in that hospital bed on a Tuesday night and listened to the machines keeping time around me, and I thought about Daniel at 11 years old, sitting at our kitchen table doing long division while I made dinner. I thought about driving him to every practice, every school trip, every appointment. I thought about the graduation parking lot and how I cried because I was so proud. I thought about how I had never once, not one time, let a call go unanswered when it came from him. I did not sleep. There is a woman named Patrice who lives 2 doors down from me. We have been neighbors for 11 years. She is 71, retired from the school district, and she brings me tomatoes from her garden every August, whether I ask for them or not. We are not close in the way of people who share everything. We are close in the way of people who know each other's cars and notice when the lights are off too long. Patrice found out I was in the hospital because Carla, my student, the young woman from the parking lot, had my address from my faculty profile and drove to my street to tell someone. She didn't know which house was mine, so she knocked on 3 doors. Patrice answered the second knock. Patrice came to the hospital that Tuesday afternoon. She sat with me through the evening. She brought her own sandwich because she knew hospital food was terrible, and she knew I probably hadn't eaten properly. She held my hand before the procedure Wednesday morning and told me I was going to be fine in the exact same calm voice Carla had used in the parking lot. I thought about that afterward, how 2 women who barely knew me showed up completely, and the person I had given 30 years of my life to was looking at waterslide rankings on his phone. Daniel called Wednesday evening. By then I was out of the procedure, resting, with a stent in my artery and a very different understanding of my situation than I'd had 48 hours earlier. He called in a normal voice. Not frantic, not guilty. He said he'd been in an area with bad reception and hadn't realized how many missed calls there were until they were heading home. He said he was sorry to hear I hadn't been feeling well. He asked if I needed anything. Hadn't been feeling well. I had a stent placed in my heart the previous morning. The hospital had called him 31 times. His mother had been in a cardiac unit for over 30 hours, and he described it as me not feeling well, in the same tone you'd use to describe a head cold. I said I was fine. I said I would be going home in a day or 2. I said I appreciated him calling. I did not say what I was actually thinking. I had spent 64 years being careful with my words around the people I loved, managing their feelings, making space for their comfort. I was very tired of doing that, but I was also still in a hospital bed, and I had learned, somewhere in those 30 hours alone, that some conversations need to happen when you are standing on solid ground. I went home on a Thursday. Patrice picked me up and drove me home and stayed until I had eaten something real and confirmed I could navigate my own stairs. Before she left, she wrote her number on a notepad and stuck it to my refrigerator and told me to use it any time without thinking twice. Daniel did not offer to come. He called that Thursday evening and asked how I was settling in and said he was glad I was home. Brianna sent a text with a flower emoji. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that call. Just sat there. The house was quiet in the way that houses are quiet when you've lived alone in them for years, a familiar silence, not a scary one. I knew every sound that house made. The particular way the furnace clicked on, the creak on the third stair, the sound of the neighbor's dog in the evenings. I thought about my will. I had not reviewed it in 4 years. My estate was not complicated: the house, a modest retirement account, some savings I had built carefully over decades. I had always intended most of it for Daniel. That had seemed obvious, automatic, the natural conclusion to all those years of providing. It no longer seemed obvious. I called my attorney, a practical woman named Louise who has handled my paperwork for 15 years, and I made an appointment for the following week. The weeks after a cardiac event are strange. You move carefully. You pay attention to your body in a way you didn't before. You also, if you are 64 years old and you have just spent a night and a half alone in a hospital because your only child didn't answer the phone, you do a great deal of thinking. I thought about what the relationship actually was, stripped of what I wanted it to be. Daniel called about once every 2 weeks. The calls were brief and surface-level work was fine. The kids were growing. The renovation was coming along. He never asked how I was managing the stairs since my knee had started bothering me. He never asked if I was lonely. He had not visited in 14 months. He had not come for my birthday in August, which fell on a Sunday that year, a genuinely easy day to visit. He sent a card. It was a nice card. Brianna organized a family Christmas at their house every year, and it was understood, without anyone saying it directly, that I was a guest at this event, in a way that his father, Gerald, who had remarried and now had an elaborate extended family, was not. Gerald was family at that Christmas. I was company. I had been making excuses for this for years. They're busy, they have small children, it's a different generation, they communicate differently. Marriage changes things, it's natural. In my kitchen, 3 weeks out from a cardiac event, I stopped making excuses. I looked at the facts the way I would look at a column of numbers that didn't add up. The numbers didn't add up. They hadn't added up for a long time, and I had kept carrying the error forward because I didn't want to find it. I met with Louise and I told her what had happened. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the reasons I have worked with her for 15 years. Then I told her what I wanted to do. She asked me if I was certain. Not in a challenging way, in the careful way of someone making sure a decision is being made clearly and not in grief. I told her I had never been more certain of anything. We revised the documents over 2 meetings. The house and the majority of the savings would go to a trust designated for Patrice, with a portion allocated to a scholarship fund at the community college in Carla's name, specifically for adult students returning to education after hardship. A small, specific bequest to Daniel. Enough to signal intention, not enough to suggest that 31 unanswered calls carry no weight. I did not tell Daniel. I went about my recovery, attended my cardiac rehabilitation appointments, walked the neighborhood every morning as instructed, ate the foods I was supposed to. Carla sent me a card when she heard I was recovering, a handwritten card with careful handwriting that said she hoped I was taking care of myself. I put it on the refrigerator next to Patrice's number. In December, Brianna called to discuss Christmas. The conversation had the particular quality of a business negotiation. She mentioned a date, mentioned that Daniel's family from his father's side would be coming, mentioned that it might be a full house. I understood the subtext. I told her I was planning a quieter holiday this year on account of my health, and that I wished them all a wonderful time. She sounded relieved. I spent Christmas with Patrice and her daughter's family, 3 houses down. It was loud and imperfect, and someone burned a dish, and we ate around it and laughed. I helped Patrice's granddaughter build something complicated with magnetic tiles for 2 hours after dinner. It was the best Christmas I had spent in years. Daniel called on Christmas afternoon. He asked how I was doing. I told him I was doing well. He told me the kids were having a great time. He did not ask what I was doing or who I was with. The call lasted 4 minutes. I was not angry when I hung up. That surprised me. I expected anger, had braced for it, but what I felt instead was something quieter, a kind of settling. The way a house settles at night, small adjustments, everything finding its level. In February, Daniel called with news. He and Brianna had decided to relocate. His company was offering a position in their Seattle office, significant promotion, significant money. They were going to sell the Westerville house and move in the spring. He mentioned in the same call that he had been thinking it might make sense for me to sell my Columbus house and use the equity to buy something near them in Seattle. He said the Pacific Northwest was lovely. He said it would be good to have help with the kids nearby. Help with the kids. He did not say, "Mom, I miss you. Mom, I want you close because you matter to me." He said it would be good to have help with the kids. I told him I would think about it. I thought about it for approximately 12 hours and concluded that I would not be moving to Seattle to provide childcare for a son who couldn't answer 31 phone calls. The following week, I listed the Columbus house, not to move to Seattle. To move to a smaller place in the same neighborhood, closer to the college, easier to maintain with a heart condition. The house had been more space than I needed for years. The sale price, this is the part Daniel did not anticipate, because he had never really paid attention to property values in my neighborhood, was considerably more than he expected. I know he hadn't expected it because of how the call went when the listing went live. He had apparently seen it on Zillow. His voice had an edge to it that I had not heard before, something tighter than his usual easy manner. He asked what I was planning to do with the proceeds. I told him I was taking care of my retirement. He asked if I had spoken with a financial advisor. I told him I had been taking care of my own finances since he was 11 years old and that I was confident in my decisions. There was a pause. Then he said he just wanted to make sure I was being smart about it. I said, "I am always smart about it, Daniel. I have had to be." He didn't have a response to that. The house sold in 9 days. I moved into a lovely 2-bedroom condominium in April, ground floor, easy on the knee, with a small patio where I've already started container gardening. Patrice lives 12 minutes away. The community college is 7 minutes away. I have a cardiac follow-up every 3 months, and Dr. Oze tells me my recovery has been excellent. I have spoken to Daniel 4 times since I moved. The calls are polite. He is in Seattle now, settling in. The children apparently love it. Brianna found work she likes. This is good. I wish them well, sincerely. He has not asked about my will. I think he has sensed something has shifted without being able to name what it is. There is a particular quality to conversations where someone is trying to assess what they may have lost, and his calls have had some of that quality lately, a little more attentive, a little less distracted, a little too late. But I notice it. I have thought many times about whether what I did was hard, whether I should feel guilty, whether a mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, in a way that absorbs everything, every silence, every missed call, every flower emoji standing in for presents. I don't think love is supposed to be unconditional in the sense of having no information. Conditions aren't punishments. They're just the truth of what happened and what didn't. My son did not come when it mattered most. He had reasons, I'm sure vacation, bad reception, not wanting to deal with whatever it was in the middle of his family trip. He had reasons. The hospital still made 31 calls. Patrice showed up with a sandwich. Carla was late for class and stopped anyway. I know who my family is now. It took a parking lot and a cardiac unit and 31 unanswered calls to show me clearly. But I know. The scholarship committee at the college has already selected the first recipient. She's a 47-year-old woman going back to school after a difficult decade. When I read her application essay, I had to put it down for a minute and look out the window. She wrote that she just needed someone to believe she was worth the investment. I understand exactly what she meant, and I am so glad I finally understood that I am too.